Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's me Swastika, and today we will be going through with the current affairs for July 28th, 2020. So before I begin, let me just tell you a little about myself. I have done my masters in political science from Jawaharlal Nehru University. I have also done my BA honors in political science from Delhi University, and in case you like my content, please don't forget to press the subscribe button, that's the red button at the bottom of the video screen. So in today's newspaper, we saw on the first page itself that 5 Rafales are taking off from France, the Salt Aviation's Merguenac airbase in southern France. They are being transported from southern France to India. In the next piece of news, we see that Delhi government has launched a new job portal which is called Rozgar Bazaar. So this is basically a job portal to help revive our economy, and it intends to bridge the gap between potential employers and employees. It is also to help those who have lost their jobs and businesses due to novel coronavirus pandemic and the successive lockdowns. So this was basically the op-ed page on the right side at the top, and it basically was an article which stated that the state of food security and nutrition in the world, SOFI, I repeat again, it's the state of food security and nutrition in the world, is a joint report issued annually by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, UNICEF, the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization. So, SOFI, which stands for the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World, is a joint report which is issued annually by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, UNICEF, the World Food Programme, and the World Health Organization. It presents to us the latest estimates of food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition at the global and regional levels. A new feature of this World SOFI report that this year has been released is analyzing the cost and affordability of healthy diets around the world. So the SOFI 2020 report highlights, it says that the 2020 edition continues to signal that significant challenges remain in the fight against food insecurity and malnutrition in all its forms. A nutrient adequate diet costs around $2.12 a day. A healthy diet costs more than $4.07 a day. 1.90 is a day is the international poverty line threshold. The world is not on track to meet the zero goal of zero hunger by 2030. So in the previous yesterday's current affairs, we had discussed all the sustainable development goals, and the second sustainable development goal, which is to be achieved by 2030 and was formulated in 2015, is the goal of meeting zero hunger. Hundreds of millions of people in India above the international poverty line of $1.90 a day per purchasing power parity per person per day cannot afford a healthy or a nutritious diet. So this basically means that poverty line, which is $1.90, is in fact less than a healthy diet, which is $2.12 a day. This basically signifies a major lack of input and lack of data that has probably been taken into consideration while formulating the poverty line, and this is very problematic because the gap, the 1.90 and the $2.12 gap is big, and because of that a lot of people cannot actually afford a healthy nutritious diet and other basic amenities. that sort of put you above poverty. Even though theoretically you will be above poverty, but you can still not afford proper food. So OCHA is a United Nations body. It was established in 1991 to strengthen the international response to complex emergencies and national disasters. It is the successor to the Office of the United Nations Disaster Relief Fund Coordinator, UNDRO. OCHA's mandate was subsequently broadened to include coordinating humanitarian response, policy development, and humanitarian advocacy. OCHA is organized OCHA organized the 2016 World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul, Turkey. It is a sitting observer in the United Nations Development Group, and the headquarters are based in two locations, New York and Geneva. So this we just have to keep in mind that OCHA is a UN body, and it was established in 1991 to strengthen the international response to complex emergencies and natural disasters. It is the successor to the Office of United Nations Disaster Relief Coordinator. So this is in the news that, and it's increasingly been in the news for the last week, that the tiger population is in fact increasing. And this time in Nagar Arjuna Sagar Sri Salam Tiger Reserve, which is NSTR. So NSTR is the largest tiger reserve in India. It spreads over five districts: Kurnool district, Prakasam district, Guntur district, Nalgonda district, Mahabubnagar district across Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. India accounts for 75% of the world's tiger population. The RBI governor has tagged five areas to spur progress. This is obviously in reference to the economy. First is the targeted infrastructure push, which basically means that mega infrastructure projects such as north, south, east, west, high speed rail corridors. Second is farm. Third is renewables. Fourth is information and communication technology startups and value supply chains. He pointed out that harnessing the potential in these could propel India to a leadership position in the League of Nations. So, guys, this was basically an article in the editorial page. It was right in the middle, and I'm just quickly going to go through with some of the brief points that I read. I just thought that even though this article did not give us a lot of factual input, it sort of gave us an opinion, and I liked the literary use of language in it, so I just decided to, like go through it. So, it basically, the basic crux of this article is that even though India has always practiced non-aligned movement, and we have been the forerunners of people who have been practicing non-aligned movement. But in the present status quo, we see that India is no longer, in fact, maintaining its strategic autonomy. Obviously, we have slipped from the position of non-aligned movement to a position that is strategically autonomous. But in the present scenario, in the current scenario, we see that we are no longer a strategically autonomous country. We are in fact becoming allies and ally to the United States, as is also almost obvious and unavoidable in a certain sense, because United States is the leading superpower. So anyway, this was the basic crux of the article, and let's discuss it. So India was seen as a rising power not long ago, and even as a de facto leader of the SARC. We have had excellent historical and cultural ties with Nepal. We have enjoyed the traditional goodwill and influence of Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. Billions of dollars worth of investment in Afghanistan has been made, and other than that, we've had like really good relations with like most of our neighbors, and like just yeah. So, what goes wrong? Presently, we are facing the gravest border crisis. SARC is out of joint. We have increasingly hostile neighbors in the form of Sri Lanka and Nepal. So, this basically means that the conflict that has been going on at the border, China has basically taken over certain points along the border, and they have done that, and they are refusing to let us come back to the status quo position as we were initially in. So this has led us to the exposure to the gravest border crisis, and SARC is out of joint. We have increasingly hostile neighbors in the form of Sri Lanka, Nepal, and three major problems have surfaced. First, obviously, is that India's official policy has always been committed to multilateralism, but lately we have not only moved away from NAM but by maintaining strategic autonomy. But the current government is all about steady erosion of strategic autonomy, and India is steadily beginning to align itself with US interests. Why do we say that? Why do we say that India is becoming a US ally? We say that because Chabahar Port, which was signed in 2003, India started moving away from it due to US pressure, despite knowing it offered an alternative route to Central Asia bypassing Pakistan. So Chahabar Port basically offers us a route to Central Asia which does not include Pakistan, and this route was of extreme importance to India because with this we could have access into Central Asia, which we will not have if we don't have the route. And this route bypassed Pakistan completely. So this was a very important deal that was signed, but India voted against Iran in UN and cut down ties drastically. Why? So basically, Iran nuclear deal was signed in 2015, and because of that, India immediately stepped up oil purchases and imports in Iran. But in 2018, USA pulled out of the deal. We know that Iran and USA are having extensive issues and fights, and USA has basically bottlenecked Iran into with all the economic sanctions and everything. And India told the line, bringing the oil imports to zero. So India, being a US chamcha, managed to get the oil imports back to zero, and also then cut down ties drastically with Iran. So because of this, we see a steady inclination of India aligning with the US and becoming a strategic ally. India steadily deepened its military cooperation in the form of logistics exchange of memorandum of agreement. Border aggression at different points was not a localized conflict but a strategic move because China sees India as a strategic ally of the US. So we know that China is basically angry at India and they see us as a strategic ally of the US. And because of that, we understand that this conflict is not localized but is in fact a strategic move by China. So because of this, two issues have been taken up by the government that are obviously populist moves, but they have drastic foreign policy consequences. First, obviously, is passing of the CAA, which is leading to regionalization of domestic problems, and neighboring countries are upset with us because of that. Muslims are being excluded by design of this act, and this has driven a wedge between India and Muslim nations. So our neighbors are angry at us because they are all Muslim nations and they feel that by passing the CAA, the Muslims are going to get excluded. Second populist measure was the abrogation of the special status of JNK. So the abrogation of Article 317 itself was not the problem, but the way in which it was done, which led to the suspension of fundamental rights in Kashmir Valley, damaging India's reputation as a responsible democratic government, is in fact problematic. So these were some of the issues. In the next piece, we see and try to understand India and Sri Lanka relations because that was in the newspaper today. So there is a need for revitalizing and reinvigorating the bilateral relation in the post-COVID world. Let's first understand the background. So Indo-Sri Lankan ties is steeped in myth and legend and influenced by religious, cultural, and social affinities. The relationship between India and Sri Lanka is more than 2,500 years old with free exchange of ideas, trade, and intellectual discourse. The advent of Buddhism to Sri Lanka during the time of Emperor Ashoka was the result of cross border discourse. Buddhist temples in Sri Lanka to this day contain shrines for Hindu deities. The colonial expansion of European maritime nations shaped the Sri Lankan economy. Labor from South India was brought to Sri Lanka to work in plantations, which in post-independence era created tensions with indigenous communities and continues to persist till date. India's freedom struggle had its influences on Sri Lanka as well. There was cross-border support for the revival of culture, tradition, local languages, spiritual practices, philosophies, and education. Both countries transformed into modern nations with constitutional and institutionalized governance under colonial rule. The next 3 decade long armed conflict between Sri Lankan forces and LTTE came to an end in May 2009. During the course of the conflict, India supported the right of Sri Lankan government, much to the anger of Sri Lankan Tamils. The trade between the two countries grew particularly rapidly after the Indian Sri Lankan Free Trade Agreement, which came into force in March 2000. So the importance of Sri Lanka to India is obviously geopolitical significance because Sri Lanka is located on the Indian Ocean region and it has strategic geopolitical. Then the second is obviously defense and security cooperation. Indian and Sri Lankan conducts joint military Mitra Shakti and naval exercise Linux. This increases energy between the militaries, thus safeguarding the common interests of the countries. The next is economic importance. So Sri Lanka is India's one of the largest trading partners among the SAARC countries, and India in turn is Sri Lanka's largest trading partner. Collaboration at a multilateral fora. So Sri Lanka is a member of regional groupings like BIMSTEC, SAARC, and in which India plays a leading role. Containing China, among others, freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific together with a rule-based international order and peaceful settlement of disputes are common interests. So there are growing concerns in this relationship. First, of course, is Sri Lanka's growing closeness to China. There are unresolved ethnic Tamil issues. There is the fear of protectionism. There is asymmetry in the relationship, and the trade balance is in favor of India. So exports from India to Sri Lanka in 2018 were 4.16 billion, while exports from Sri Lanka to China are 767 million. So Sri Lanka wants to reduce this imbalance and wants greater access to Indian markets. The way ahead is obviously going to be while avoiding advocacy of zero-sum solutions on crucial issues. Both countries must seek to harmonize strategic and other interests in line with common values and socio-economic compulsions. Sri Lanka can encourage Indian entrepreneurs to make Colombo another business hub for them as logistic capacities are improving in Sri Lanka. Integrating the two economies but with special and differential treatment in Sri Lanka due to economic asymmetries needs to be fast tracked. Engagement with legislatures is also essential for promoting multi-party support. With many countries receding into cocoons due to the pandemic, this is an opportunity for both countries to focus on the renewal and revitalization of partnerships. So, the next one is on Assam floods. We know these floods are basically recurring in nature and has become an annual phenomena. And the government, even though has invested heavily in forecast technologies, designed and implemented large-scale disaster evacuation, and come up to SOPs for effective relief operations. All these efforts by government in collaboration with civil society have been able to save lives, but not enough has been done. The report assessment of climate change over the Indian region has warned that a projected rise in average temperatures is likely to exacerbate such disasters with greater intensity and frequency, but India is unprepared for it. The vulnerability of India's critical infrastructure to climate extremes would not only undermine development gains but also have severe implications for its ecosystems, economic productivity, energy, food security, and public health. The way ahead is obviously to have a comprehensive policy framework for climate resilient infrastructure. An aggressive strategy to integrate climate resilience needs to be a national government flagship schemes for infrastructure development such as AMRUT and Smart Cities Mission and Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana should put a greater emphasis on climate resilient standards adoption. National Action Plan for Climate Change mandates local governments to include climate adaptation and mitigation strategies for the development projects. This has to be implemented in spirit at the ground level. The Model Building Bylaws 2016 that provides for risk classification of buildings and climate resilient construction. India should collectively mobilize its existing institutional climate capabilities and stay up to date on critical infrastructure. The importance of building climate resilient infrastructure is obviously that It would save lives and livelihoods, minimize economic losses, and ensure efficient allocation of resources for development. As extreme events are becoming the new normal in an increasingly climate constrained world, India's critical infrastructure must be built to withstand, respond to, and to recover rapidly from the disruptions they cause. So, thank you for watching this. And in case you like my content and you like the stuff that I'm putting up, please don't forget to press the subscribe button. That's going to be great of you. Thank you for watching.